It's like all things Providence, sort of, at least for the rundown. Then we've got a guest who's going to chronicle 20 years of reform. In about 11 working minutes. I'm not sure how we're going to do that. My guess is that we'll have Phil West back on for a further conversation, a longer conversation about his book, which is about this thick. And I haven't gotten to it yet. I know some people who've said they've read it. Actually, that's a lie. I know one person who is rumored to have read it all. And I'll tell you who that is a little bit later on. But Phil was always an interesting, provocative, and important guy in our community when he was heading up Common Cause, a very important good government group. He's now retired from that, has written a book, and for some reason has become an endorsement machine in the political season 2014. So we'll talk about that amongst other things with him this evening. But we're going to go to the rundown. By the way, Dan York, pleased to meet you. Thanks for joining me on my state of mind. Yeah, this is a Providence rundown because it was a very intense day today between the two campaigns. Jorge Elorza talking about blight in the city, Buddy Cianci talking about his pickup of a 3 cities plan for the waterfront. And in both places, they were talking from literal pigsties. And you're saying, Dan, that's not how you spell pigsty. Yes, it is. Laura looked it up for me. So there. And Tavares op-ed going after Buddy and the Providence Police Union. So we got a lot going on regarding the city of Providence today, tonight. So let us dig into these items, if you don't mind. Item number 1, Elorza on blight. Now, you're going to have to bear with me. I'm becoming camera-wise entrepreneurial. Sometimes I put my iPhone the wrong way. Sometimes I can't stay steady. But in lieu of having my own crew out there, we'll get there in time. Sometimes I take my own video. So there was a press conference today at on Greeley Street. Wrong set of notes. On Greeley Street. And it was Jorge Elorza talking about his housing court experience, his ideas on how to take 100 buildings a year, turn them around, and start to build the city back from the blight that exists. Here's a flavor of where he was standing on Greeley and just some of what he had to say.
As a former housing court judge, I know firsthand the damaging effects of blight on the most vulnerable parts of our city. Boarded up, derelict, and vacant properties, such as these that we have here, are a scourge on too many of our neighborhoods and also our streets throughout the city. They become sources of criminal activity, they depress home values, and they lead to low neighborhood morale.
So I get that, and I applaud him for talking about blight in the city. You want to talk about blight. You want to fix the blight. It's necessary. His plan is to have a revolving fund. I've already been told we already have a revolving fund, but a new revolving fund, a new funding mechanism from the federal government and/or for bonding. You know, the details you can read on his website, but the idea that he's talking about it is a good thing. I will tell you, though, it's all 36,000 feet type of stuff. You know what I mean by that? It's not really digging deep, and we're going to talk about that coming up. So in the meantime, all of that experience as the housing court judge and his discussion of fixing up buildings and holding landlords accountable and financial institutions accountable and all the new ways he wants to do that were okay to me. Then I go over to Allens Avenue. An hour and a half later, Buddy Cianci has his press conference on the waterfront. Next item. And Mr. Cianci is, you know, I wander over there to another dump, this area north of Thurber's Avenue, down by the water, north of the big oil tanks down there, the tankers, all that. And so you see a little bit of a scene there, and there's a tweet picture that I have of the same spot that was there. But this is what Mr. Cianci said about his new ideas for this beautiful waterfront.
I want to show you these plans. If we can now unveil these plans right here. They're right. Okay, they're right there. Here's a vision for a mixed-use port. It reclaims the waterfront for people to enjoy, eliminates a significant eyesore on the shoreline, creates new opportunities for job creation, and establishes a new gateway to the city.
Okay, so Buddy hires from his campaign funds this architectural firm to build this picture of this new plan. So let me show you the picture here. This is what he's looking at, and you're going to get a kick out of this. So this is a mixed-use thing. with some stuff at the very, very top. He's got some urban farming stuff going on up there. And if you see on the right-hand side, you may be able to see, well, you can't really see it with this particular picture, but up on the top there's some cruise ships. Those are just regular ships down there by the baseball field. Yes, that is a baseball field. And actually to the right of the baseball field, you see that like cylindrical thing? This is the thing that Jess all fired up. There's a Ferris wheel there. And then there's a soccer stadium, and there's a hockey arena, and they've even painted the oil tanks so that they kind of are all dressed up. And you know what? Why not? Right? The key is, how do you get it done? How do you get the federal funds for that kind of project? Do you have a federal delegation that will actually support you? Is there a vision on the zoning? Are you going to get rid of the strip clubs? What are you going to do down there to get all of this done? Buddy Cianci had no price for his project today. He just wanted to offer the vision thing. And you know what? If that is all right for everybody at this juncture, then that's all right. He did say, though, that we could model this after Portland, Maine, and replicate what they're doing, and their place is pristine, and it's working, and cruise ships do come, and it's mixed use, and it's hotel, and it's restaurants, and it's business, and it's medical, and it's all those things. So, give them A+ for effort there. But here's the thing that's driving me crazy about the whole thing, and that is this 36,000-foot level that both candidates seem to be on when it comes to prettying up the city. Here's my concept. Third item on my rundown. This place is a pigsty. It is disgusting. I'm driving around, and by the way, don't be insulted by that, because don't take this personally. But can I just show you? First of all, here's a vacant lot. On my way to Jorge Alorza's press conference today, there's a lot 1 block over. Now, Jorge had his best shoes on and his best dress suit, and he wasn't cleaning that up. See, there's no politician.
But choose for one reason or another not to maintain and upkeep their homes, then you bring every power that you have to bear, and you hold them accountable to make sure that they're taking responsibility for their properties. That's exactly what I did as a housing court judge, and that's exactly what I'll do as mayor as well.
Will there be a litter program under your administration, that kind of thing?
There already is. The Department of Inspections and Standards is already required to go out and inspect the properties and see wherever there's debris that's accumulating, cite them and find them and bring them to the housing court.
Okay, so we kind of jumped the gun there a little bit, but my point here is that there's this dump, right? This dump across from an occupied home, one of very many in the neighborhood there in the North End. I asked Jorge Alorza about it. He can't dig deep. He can't get into it. He just wants to cite more programs and this and that. But he's not the only one. Buddy Cianci can't do the same thing. So I remind you about what kind of a dump Allen's Avenue is here. This still photo that I tweeted out. There's garbage all over that site too. And then I asked Cianci about both the North End and the site that he was on, and what's he going to do about the litter?
There has to be anti-litter campaigns, anti-graffiti campaigns. There has to be a police force that integrates with those community groups to build that neighborhood up. And yeah, there's no difference between Jorge Alorza and myself. With that, we both believe the neighborhoods are in terrible shape. He had his press conference today. I had mine 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's not about press conferences. It's about cleaning the streets up, and it's not just about mayoral candidates. It's about citizens having some responsibility for their own mess. Whether you lease, whether you own, whether you squat, whatever. And this is going to be the beginning of a theme here, because the place is just too dirty. And you know what? I haven't heard Angel Tavares say much about it either, which leads me to my transition and next item here. He's out betting on the mayoral race. Here was the headline, and here's a quote from this op-ed piece that Angel Tavares put together. He wonders out loud whether or not the leadership of the police union is negotiated with Mr. Cianci in return for the endorsement. What kind of dirty deal is going on between the two? I asked Cianci about it today.
They made no promises to me. I made no promises to them. I appeared before their full membership. They were concerned about equipment. They were concerned about cars. They were concerned about lack of manpower. That's what they were concerned about when I had the meeting with them.
So there you have it. Nothing behind the scenes that would be of any provocative nature. So that is the story so far. So that's kind of a roundabout from Providence today. We're in the heat of a mayoral race, and I just wish the place was cleaner. And I think we all have to do a better job in bringing attention to that. And it doesn't mean government programs and politicians. It means us. when we come back. Phil West on his 20 years of reform. Stay with us. So, take a look at this book title right here. This is pretty impressive, Secrets and Scandals. And I thought it might be a quick read. I've got a great review. Jim Barron from the Pawtucket Times, one of those members of the press who thinks the effort is absolutely worth it. Let me just show you this. So when I saw Phil the other day at an Alorza press conference, I said, okay, I'll take a vacation on the beach and try to get this whole thing done. But that's my mission by the end of 2014, to read 20 Years of Reform. Welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's good to be with you.
I consider Phil West kind of an old working friend. He has been a friend of the citizens in his effort for common cause for a long time. We didn't always agree on things, but I think your heart has always been in the right place. Quickly, because I have a lot of things I want to talk about both inside the book and beyond, what was your motive in writing the book?
Oh, well, people forget so quickly what happened. And most people outside the State House don't understand what's going on there. And so I would say the real motive is to help people understand. Because there's a danger for people on the outside to look and say they're all a bunch of crooks, which is not true. And not to recognize the kind of institutional pressures that move people from the idealism with which some enter the State House to the kind of corruption that sometimes embarrasses us all.
How many different secrets and scandals are listed in the book?
Oh, I haven't counted them, but I could do them on my fingers. I started with Ed DePreet, RISD, which was a very complicated scandal. The making of an empire, there was the judicial scandal. Then there were pension scandals from the 80s that we came back to. And then there were many little scandals in terms of legislators serving on boards and commissions that prompted the push for separation of powers.
I got to know you pretty well through covering the Ethics Commission when it was, I don't know, I'm here long enough, 15 years next month, to be able to say there was a heyday for the Ethics Commission, I thought. Doesn't seem like there is one now.
Well, the Ethics Commission has always been under siege by the legislature in one form or another. I could describe the details to you, and a lot of them are in the book. But it's very hard for the Ethics Commission. And in 2009, the Supreme Court, by a 4-1, I think, badly flawed ruling, said that the Ethics Commission had no authority to prosecute the former Senate President, Bill Irons, for hiding a huge amount of insurance commissions that he took from CVS. They weren't giving insurance commissions anywhere else in the country, but they gave them to him, and it was big money. He hid it. But basically they said the Ethics Commission cannot prosecute him for that. Since then, no legislator has been prosecuted or can be prosecuted. So one.
Of course, the argument was it was all in the line of his official duty.
It was official duty, and it was an ancient doctrine called speech and debate that goes back to the British Parliament.
So I'd like to have you back at length to talk about some of these concepts. The whole shows you and I could do together, but there's some really good, important things that happen in the middle of this in this 20-year review. And one of them is separation of powers. Huge change for the state. Yes.
Yes.
Talk to me about it.
Sheldon Whitehouse in 1992 said to me, "The work you're doing on ethics and campaign reform is good, but you will never cut the deep root of Rhode Island's corruption until you get to separation of powers." Now, I'm from New York, so I didn't know what he meant. But we began to study it, and in 1994, Common Cause made it our top priority. And it was then a 10-year battle. Midway through that 10-year battle, the Supreme Court ruled 4-1 that Rhode Island had no separation of powers. That in fact we were, their phrase, a quintessential system of parliamentary supremacy.
Which means, in layman's terms?
Well, that basically we're like the English Parliament. And that's not inherently unethical. And they completely shut down the issue of separation of powers itself. So it became a real battle. And another scandal that then helped to turn it around was John Harwood's meltdown with Wendy Collins. But I want to be clear that even before that, the governor and the Senate had committed to separation of powers. So we had the House was cornered at that point in 2002. And then just at the worst time, Harwood had his own scandal.
For those who don't understand what it is, define in short term what separation of powers means.
The genius of the American political system was that the founders in Philadelphia in 1787 said basically the way we can have honest government that doesn't tyrannize the people or abuse them, is that we have to separate the three kinds of power: legislative power, executive power, and judicial power, and give them a turf interest to fight with each other if anyone abuses its powers. In England, they'd had a weaker and different kind of separation of powers, but this was the American contribution to good government.
All right, and again, that's another whole show, and we can we'll have an academic conversation on that in the near future. When we come back, there's a real important conversation going on right now. Phil has written an op-ed piece on it. It's about the Constitutional Convention, and then he's been kind of like an endorsement machine. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us.
We need to restore confidence in government. The legislature's been reluctant to deal with the reform agenda, and now the only way that a reform agenda can be dealt with is to let the people do it directly. And the only option in this state for the people to exercise direct democracy is through a constitutional convention.
That is Gary Sass, former revenue director, former RIPAC head, now at Bryant Institute, who is arguing for a constitutional convention. That's question 3 on your ballot coming up, and Phil put an op-ed piece up in the Providence Journal just the other day. If you're fed up with the General Assembly, get yourself a con-con. So you're with Gary Sass on this
Absolutely.
concept.
And it's interesting because 10 years ago, Gary and I did an op-ed together and said no need for a constitutional convention now.
Because the General Assembly was behaving well?
Not they were behaving well, but they, at least after some real struggle, were putting amendments on the ballot. Since then, they've been unable or unwilling to do major amendments that would in any way curtail their own power. So their tendency to become a self-perpetuating machine has come sweeping back.
People wonder what this argument's about. It's as simple as things like a line item veto for the governor. That the legislature is not going to give us that in a vote up and down until such time as a convention kind of forces it down their throat, and the people say yes in a voting mode. We want that.
That's right.
Yeah. Another reason for a lengthy conversation. Pablo Rodriguez, a prominent person in the city of Providence in Rhode Island, is against the Constitutional Convention, and he's going to appear on our program Thursday, Jess, so stay tuned for that. You've been
Pablo is a friend.
Yeah.
And we've had some good conversations
Well,
about
their
this.
argument is that there's special interest infiltration into a convention that's going to take away personal rights. And I know Gary the other night was saying, you know what, we'll waive that. You know, we'll make a big promise that we won't bring up abortion, same-sex marriage, those kinds of things.
More than that, we will stand shoulder to shoulder with them and oppose any of those. They were distractions in the 1986 convention. I think they'd have less chance of success today. The anti-abortion amendment in '86 went down by a 2-to-1 vote, the worst of any of them.
Okay.
So I think it's not likely that today you'd be more likely to get an anti-abortion amendment. But
Right.
I think that we need to understand their fear.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When you were running Common Cause, you didn't endorse anybody, did you?
Did not, could not.
Now that you're retired from that and you're writing books, now you're like an endorsement machine. Jorge Elorza, candidate for mayor. Why?
Carl Bogus, who was the head of our Separation of Powers Task Force, is on the faculty at Roger Williams University Law School. And he called me in the summer of 2013 and said, I want you to have lunch with this guy. So the three of us had lunch, and I listened to Jorge's story. I knew then that Buddy was going to run. And I was already thinking, someone has got to be here who can stand up to Buddy, stand toe-to-toe in debate, and not be swept away by the razzle-dazzle. And I was impressed with Elorza as I got to know him, and as I have had numerous subsequent conversations with him, I have been increasingly convinced that he's sound. I don't have the long background that I had with Angel Taveras before I endorsed him in 2010.
I have to tell you, Elorza seems to me to be almost ready, but he doesn't seem to be able to go very deep. He seems to be horizontally sound. In other words, he gets a bunch of concepts, but his vertical skills are not there.
Oh, I think his vertical skills are there.
I
but
see no proof
he's-
of it, Phil. I've had 3 shows with him. I see nothing on the ground that tells me that he can dig deep and get it.
Well, we disagree, and I think only time will tell.
All right. Well, that's not.
But I
I'm not
think he-
arguing your endorsement. I'm just
I know.
testing you on.
I think he's going to
on-
win, and I think that he's going to prove to be a good mayor. And he's not going to do what I wish Angel had not done,
Which is?
namely to jump for another office after 4 years.
All right. What about Catherine Taylor for lieutenant governor? That came out today. What's that all
Yeah,
about?
yeah. Well, I've known Catherine since she worked for John Chafee, and she and a number of other people began to reach out to me, not for an endorsement, but for help with their ethics packages during the summer. And I know her. I've worked with her. I trust her. And her insights and her commitment are real.
I would submit that Dan McKee, disclosure, a friend of mine, and I argue with him
Oh,
on
he's good,
politics
too.
all the time.
He's good.
He's a good government guy.
He's a good guy.
So it's hard.
They're both good government
Okay.
people.
All right. So we won't split hairs there. And then Nellie Gorbea?
Yeah, I met Nellie when we were doing redistricting in 2000, between 2000 and 2002. She was the head of the Rhode Island Latino PAC, Political Action Committee, and I just saw her qualities. I then worked with her when she was Deputy Secretary of State. She's good.
All right. Come back a lot. Congratulations on the book. Secrets and Scandals. Pick it up where? Everywhere?
It's at a bunch of bookstores. It's not on Amazon yet, but I'll be selling it in a bunch of places. If they go to the website, they'll see where I'll be signing books and selling them.
Secret and Scandals. Your state of mind. Then. Your state of mind is becoming kind of comical. Leave me a voicemail at 228-1886, email or Facebook post. Here's one that, what?
Stay away from Buddy and stay away from Bill, too. Come on, Dan. Come on. Smarten up. Stay away from Bill.
Okay. All right, buddy. I get stay away from Buddy, but as soon as you let me know who Bill is, I'll stay away from him. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPR. I'm back here tomorrow night at 7:30. Good night.